No.
Participant. वो तो मेरा नहीं है। हेलो।
Dr. Shivani? Dr. Shivani, are you hearing me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm hearing you, sir. Good afternoon, sir.
Yes, I'm hearing you too.
So, hello, Dr. Caston, how are you? Hello, Dr. Caston, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Hello.
Okay. So, you are welcome, sir. You are welcome.
Thank you.
You are welcome, sir.
Sir, we'll start this program in a short while, sir. Just start this program in a short while, sir.
Okay.
I request all the participants to please put up
Some problem. Just a minute. Yes, join. Unmute him. You will start.
I cannot unmute him. sir.
Okay, okay. This is Raza. You start now.
Good evening, everyone, sir.
Okay.
Shall I start the program, sir? Okay, sir.
Okay, just a minute, just a minute. Not switch on.
Before to start the program, I request all the participants, students, please put off your cameras. Mr. Agam Padum, put off your camera. Mr. Arun Kumar, put off your camera, please. Mr. Agasti also, put off your cameras. Mr. Arun Kumar Jaiswal. Mr. Arun Kumar Jaiswal, आप अपना कैमरा ऑफ कर दीजिए.
Yeah, we can start now.
Okay, very good evening to everyone. As we all know that we all are gathered online for a 4 days webinar on environment and climate change, which start today from 20th July to 23rd July under NAHIP program. And the organizing host is College of Horticulture and Forestry, Central Agriculture University, Pasighat, Arunachal Pradesh. Today we have with us our chief guest of today's inaugural session, Dr. S. Basanta Singh, Director Instruction, CAU Imphal. We have with us guest of honor, Professor B. N. Hazarika sir, Dean and Nodal Officer, IDP, NAHIP program. And we have Dr. P. Raja, Associate Professor and Associate Nodal Officer, IDP NAHIP project. I'm myself, Dr. Shivani Dobal. I'm organizing secretary of this event. I would like to introduce about our main resource person for today's inauguration session, that is Dr. Ernst Christian. He's also available. He's a senior scientist and he's from Göttingen, Germany. We welcome you, sir. And thank you very much for giving us time. Thank you so much. So to begin this program, I would like to request Dr. P. Raja, sir, to give a welcome speech, sir.
A very good afternoon to everyone. Respected DA of our university, Dr. Basanta Singh, chief guest of today's function, and respected Dean of our college, Professor B. N. Hazarika, and today is our resource person, Dr. Ernest Corson. Thank you for joining us today. I welcome all the participants on behalf of College of Horticulture and Forestry, IDP NAHIP project. This is our fourth webinar, and it is meant for the students to start this entrepreneurship and acquire the various skills like language skills and soft skill development, and even this startup, various agriculture and horticulture related sectors, even the short lectures and various. So in these aspects, our resource person, Ernest Kursen, he will be talking about the climate change. And I welcome all the participants on this. And I also would like to say that all the participants, all the students, and to make use of this program. And it is live on the YouTube also. It will be available even if the network is not there in your place. and make use of it. Once again, I welcome all of you, and I'll give the time.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Now I request our respected guest of honor, Professor B.N. Hazarika, sir, to address the gathering. Hazarika, sir, I request you to say a few words.
Yeah. Well, good afternoon to everyone. Am I audible to you?
Yes, sir.
Am I audible to you? So good afternoon once again from the College of Horticulture and Forestry, Pasighat, Central Agricultural University. Our very dynamic director of instruction, Dr. Basant Singh Sahab, and my colleague, Dr. Raja, Dr. Shibani, and more importantly, very learned resource person of the today function, today's Dr. Kirsten was, sir, are very much loved to in this group with us. Sir, as you know, the College of Horticulture is implementing a IDP NAHEP program under dynamic leadership of our nodal Dr. Basant Singh Sahab, Director of Instruction, Central Agricultural University. The college is performing the various activities in relation to your IDP program under the NAHEP World Bank program. So in this program, a series of lectures are being conducted in our college through this webinar platform. And this is the fourth time we are going to do it. And today, it is inauguration of the 4-day webinar program on environment and climate change, which is a very important area of the present day situation. And for this 4 days program, we have invited the 4 very eminent scientists of the world. As you say, today with us, Ernest Kirsten is from the Germany. He is the senior scientist of the Tree and Competence Center of the Göttingen, Germany. So we are very much eager to hear from Dr. Sahab. And also, we are also inviting Dr. Priya Karu from Thailand, and also 2 very eminent scientists from the India. So in this inaugural program, I have a very much connected with our student also. And through this program, I think our students will be highly benefited, and our students will be enjoying this lecture given by the Ernest Kirsten on the climatic change. As you know, day by day, globally, the climate change is going on, and in the climate change effect is there in everywhere. And in our state also, the effect of climate change is there. And that is why we have invited our very learned resource person who is very much pertinent to this climate change mitigation, and his special area is itself is a climate change mitigation, and he is also having a lot of experience on climate change mitigation, and he is a visiting faculty to the India for exchange program of the Indo-German DAT program sponsored by the German Academy of Exchange Services. He is involved in various scientific programs in more than 10 nations in terms of international exposure, including USA, South Korea, Costa Rica, Greece, Turkey, Russia, Hungary, Ukraine, Spain, and India itself. So he is also a contributor, a contributing editor of the Indian Journal of Wood Science. So it is a highly worth it. We have invited the Dr. Ernest Kirsten to this program. So with these few words, I want to welcome everyone in the screen who is viewing this platform to have the very enlightening lecture given by the Ernest Kirsten. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir, for your words. Now I request Chief Guest of Inaugural Function, Dr. S. Basanta, sir, Director of Instruction, CU Imphal, to say a few words, sir. Sir.
Yes, very good afternoon to everyone. Dr. B.N. Hazarika, Dean College of Horticulture and Forestry and Nodal Officer of this IDP project. Dr. Raja, Co-Nodal Officer of this project. Dr. Shivani, and today's very learned resource person, Dr. Ernst Karsten from Göttingen, Germany, and all my beloved students. You know, this climate change is the talk of the day. It's very important topic. You know, this climate change is mostly affecting to agriculture. And you know, the northeastern hill region of this country, we have more than 70% of the area under hills and about 40% of the area is under forest. And because of this, many evil agricultural practices, particularly zoom cultivation and other evil practices, there's a lot of this affecting on this climate and agriculture. You know, this region, we are experiencing a lot of this pest and disease problem, particularly because of this climate change. And our rainfall pattern is now become very erratic, and is also a lot of frequent floods and droughts. So this agroforestry, you see, is a very, this topic is the only option, I think, to mitigate and adapt this climate change, particularly in agriculture. So this farming system, agroforestry particularly, is very old in this region, but the scientific method of agroforestry is very new. So many of these farming systems, agroforestry-based farming systems, have been developed. But the problem is that farmers are not accepting to these technologies developed by the scientists. So there is something is lacking. I think today's our resource person, I think he will tell more on that agroforestry to mitigate climate change adaptations. So I welcome Dr. Ernst Karsten to Central Agricultural University, sir. You are most welcome to this university, Central Agricultural Universities, whose these campuses are distributed in 7 states in northern regions in India. And I think if you get time in some or other day in future, I think we'll invite you so that your physical presence is required, and we may take a lot of advantage from you regarding this climate change mitigation, being an expert. And you know, this project, I just wanted to introduce something on this project. This project, this IDP, under National Agriculture Higher Education Project, this project is funded by the World Bank in only 16 universities in the country, and our university is one of the recipient of this project. And our university, Central Agriculture University, Imphal, it is having 13 colleges, and this project will be implementing only in 6 colleges. And the main objective of this project is to produce globally competitive graduates in terms of this entrepreneurship. You know, at present in India, the problem faced by the agricultural graduate is that employability is very low. And most of the students after passing out from the university, they are mostly job seekers instead of job providers. So the government of India is encouraging the students to adopt this entrepreneurship as a career option, so that they become job providers other than job seekers. And in this project, a lot of components are there. This training component is a very big component. Under training component, we have national training programs and international training programs. So this today's program is under national training program. And under national training programs, in each of the colleges, we have to organize at least 4 trainings in a month. And you see, under this international training programs, 100 students from this university, from these 6 colleges, they have to expose in internationally reputed these universities for 3 months. they are exposed to the business environment and they learn about these business skills. And not only the students, our about 37 faculty members from this university have to expose for 3 months under this project in frontier this agriculture these areas. So other than these training programs, there are a lot of these infrastructure development opportunities. We have to develop this language laboratory. We have to develop the smart classrooms. We have to develop the incubation centers and many more. So this project is a very rare opportunity for the university and particularly for the undergraduate students, so that they are trained in entrepreneurship, so that after passing out from these universities, they adopt this entrepreneurship as a career options. Not only a simple entrepreneurship, this is world-class entrepreneurship. We are talking about world-class entrepreneurships. So this opportunity, taking this opportunity, I appeal to all our particular students. So these nodal officers and all the deans and other these members of the project, we are trying our best to train you about entrepreneurship skills, soft skills, communication skills, and startup, so many things. So don't miss this opportunity. So I think you all should take advantage of this project and should not miss any opportunity. So with these few words, I thank to the organizer for inviting me and also to Dr. Ernst Prustent for accepting our invitation to talk on this agroforestry. So thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your valuable words and words of appreciation and brief information about these whole programs. And to proceed further, sir, I would like to discuss something more about this program through the PPT, which we have prepared for the participants. So I'm going to share this PPT. So here, this program is under the NIHE program, and we are the organizing committee having our chief patron, our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor M. Premjit Singh, and we have patron committee of this committee is Dr. S. Basanta Singh, Sir, Director of Instruction, CAU. Our chairperson is Professor B.N. Hazarika, sir, Dean and Nodal Officer. Then our coordinator for this organizing committee is Dr. P. Raja, Associate Nodal Officer, IDP NAHEB, and myself, Dr. Shivani, I'm the organizing secretary of this committee. We have organized this Thank you, sir. Extremely sorry for the inconvenience to the disconnectivity. So I will continue further. So here in this program, the organizing committee of the organizing committee for this program, College of Horticulture, as I told you, is that Dr. B.N. Hazarika, Dean and Nodal Officer of this program, Dr. P. Raja, Associate Professor, and he is a co-nodal officer of this program, and myself, Organizing Secretary. Highlights of this program is, first is that the feedback link will be sent to the participant through email soon after the completion of the lecture. Then link will be opened up to 8 p.m. for giving the feedback, and you can subscribe the channel of YouTube with this given link. The participants, e-certificates, the participant should attend all the sessions and attempt the quiz of 40 marks, and each session carrying 10 marks each, and the participant who scores above 30% marks, they will get the certificate. E-certificate will be emailed to the participant within 2 weeks after filling the post-webinar test. So we have with us our first speaker, Dr. Ernst Kirsten. He is a senior scientist, 3N Competence Center, Göttingen, Germany. He is engaged in the program of the project Carbon Farming, and some highlights about his biography. He is a senior scientist at the University of Applied Science, Göttingen. He was a lecturer at University of Applied Sciences, Hanover, consultant at HCN Holz Consulting GmbH and CEO of Wood Reports GmbH. He is a lecturer and coordinator for international projects at Bad Wildington, and he was also an organizer of ESF project. He was a visiting scientist in India under German Academic Exchange Service, that program. He was a coordinator of international PhD program, wood biology and technology. And international, he has an experience of visiting more than 10 countries, including USA, Costa Rica, Rwanda, Malawi, India, South Korea, Netherlands, Belgium, Norway. He had a good publication. He has a good publication of international and national reputed journals. So, as the time is already 3 p.m., as we set this time for our speaker's presentation, so I hand over this charge to our respected speaker, Dr. Ernst Kirsten, to start their presentation. Sir.
Okay, first of all, I want to thank you very much for inviting me and for implementing me into this very interesting program. Thanks to Professor Hazarika and Dr. Singh and to you. And yeah, it's a real pleasure for me to... Huh? So do you see my presentation now? Okay, so it's a real pleasure for me to come back to India this way. Originally, there was the idea to go to India this year anyway, physically, but at least now I can come there on this way. I'm very happy about this. And I'm also happy to tell you about my program I'm working on just now. It was already said a lot about me. I'm working for this Lower Saxony 3N Competence Center, and I'm a lecturer at the University of Applied Sciences in Hanover right now. And most importantly, I think, was that I had the pleasure to live in India for 1.5 years, from June 2007 till December 2008. I was staying at Dehradun. And I had also the possibility to travel around in India a little bit. I will show you some pictures which I made at this time about agroforestry systems. So the program I'm working at is an European Union funded program. Interreg North Sea region is the kind of project. And on this map, you can see the different participants in this program. There are 2 Belgian, 2 Dutch, and 2 German organizations involved, and a Norwegian as well. So these are the names of the institutes. These are all institutes dealing somehow with agriculture. Yeah. At the beginning of my presentation, I will tell you something more about our project, what we are doing, and what is the background of this. Then I will tell you something about agroforestry. That's my special topic, which I also brought into this program, which was originally not in mind of the developers. I show you some examples of agroforestry systems, and quite important I learned now is number 4, how to fund tree planting, because as I heard just now, this event is also focusing on developing skills for the business, to develop entrepreneurship skills. And so I think my information might be very interesting for people who are looking for possibilities to earn money in that field. At the end, just a very short remark on biochar, and then I will give a summary on my presentation. So, carbon farming. The project is running already since 1.5 years. You have seen. It's about climate. Basically, it's meant as a climate change mitigation activity. That means the main aim is to increase the soil organic carbon content of the agricultural lands, but it's on the same time it's a climate change adaptation measure, as I will explain to you soon. What we are doing is basically an inventory of the techniques to enhance soil carbon and other carbon stores on agricultural land, and to disseminate these methods, especially by finding or by developing business cases. So that means, how can a farmer earn money by increasing his soil organic carbon content? There are already some things working in Germany and other countries, but we want to make these cases more known to the farmers and to convince them that this might be an option for them too. In our European group, we used to meet 2 times a year at each of the participants' places. This picture here you can see is from the second meeting at the other German participant, which is the Institute for Organic Farming in northern Germany. And there on the right side, you see a picture from the third meeting in Belgium. On that meeting, we not only discuss, but also we look around, and here you can see the first example of agriculture, because here this is a trial of alley cropping, which looks like this. That means there are stripes of short rotation, fast growing poplars in the agricultural fields. This is, let's say, the recently most discussed way of agroforestry in Germany so far, but it's maybe not the best one. Especially, it's always a problem of economics, but of convincing farmers to do it. So these kind of alley cropping systems are especially being researched on in Eastern Germany, where it's extremely dry. But I come to this later. So on the right hand, you see our meeting, and on this picture, you can see an Indian who was working at the Belgian, at the Netherlands colleagues at this time, but he only joined the project for some months and then he left again. I don't know why, but he was a very nice colleague whom I got to know at this event and who wrote part of our publications. Just a first idea of what Indian students can do later after finishing studies. So they can go to Europe, of course, and this Alekendo Patnaik, he did a master's in Netherlands on organic agriculture after doing his bachelor's in Delhi. And now he is self-employed and kind of a consultant for organic farming in Netherlands. So the problems we are facing in Europe right now, you can really see here. This is a very big field in Netherlands, and there they told us about wind erosion problems. And anyway, everywhere in Europe we have problems that pesticides are not working anymore because either they are banned or the insects or fungi become resistant against these pesticides. So these are some of the problems we are facing. It's a very intensive agriculture, of course. This is, as I told you, in the Netherlands. In Germany, we have sometimes pictures like this. This is a picture from just 4 kilometers from my home. Last summer, the last 2 summers were extremely dry in Central Europe. So such kind of a drought we never had before, especially not 2 times after another. So it's a real sign of climate change we are facing. And even the forests now are severely damaged. Here you can see I think I took the picture in August, and this many trees already became brownish and yellow because of the drought. So the drought this year, luckily, it's more or less a summer we had in former times always with some rain in between, but the last 2 summers they were very dry, and the groundwater table still is on an extremely low level in Germany now. So the intensive agriculture not only causes these problems of resistance, but also species extinction, of course. So the number of insects decreased very much in Germany, and the intensive agriculture also causes problems for the water supply. That means especially the many cows and pigs we are growing here, they're producing so much of mist, so which is also the intensive fertilization of the landscape leads to a high level of nitrogen in groundwater. So due to these problems, which will affect our drinking water supply, at least the costs to prepare it, they are all reasons for changes in the agricultural policy these days. So we know about the problems and we have to change our subsidy system. I don't know how it works in India, but in European Union, farmers get subsidies from the European Union just for the ground, so per hectare, but in addition for some special services they are offering for nature protection, and this subsidy system urgently has to be changed in a way, not so much payment for just the land, but for the ecological services. Without these subsidies, European agriculture would not be competitive against other countries' productions. So grain and so on can be produced, and sugar, for example, you can produce it much cheaper with sugar. Sugar you can produce much cheaper in India than we are doing it here. But the subsidies are a protection for our farmers. So now I have a short video which was produced in our project. I hope it will work and it will be understandable. So sorry, I made a mistake. So I think it was quite a motivating movie. As I told you, it was made within our projects, and I just want to repeat the basic messages we are having. So first one is that soil organic matter basically is created by the plants themselves. It can be added by compost or something, but the main way to get carbon into the earth is plants, and especially mixed crops and mixed crops. Different kind of roots should be there to improve this way of storing carbon. Humus is created by these plants in form of dead roots and the fungi who are decomposing it, and microorganisms. So this is the natural way of improving soil. In agriculture, this can be supported by no-till practices. We are not sure about no-till. There are, of course, some arguments for no-till practice, but sometimes it seems to be better to till, but at least one basic aspect is never to have the soil open or bare. So on the right picture, you see a bare soil. This should basically not happen. You should always have some cover crops or compost or some mulch or whatever. Never leave the soil bare exposed to sun and rain, because this always reduces the carbon content and disturbs the soil life. So these are some basic aspects which are not followed even in our agriculture everywhere, but some people are doing it since many years, and especially in ecological agriculture, it's being done to keep the soil covered, and it's also funded by the EU funding to have some cover crops at least. So in addition to this measures, you can also add trees to the agricultural landscape, which of course store additional carbon and also protect the soils, especially in case of wind. In some areas in Europe, like Ukraine, for example, where you have dry periods and strong winds, it's very helpful for the agricultural production to have shelter belts. And even here where I'm living in this northern Germany, it makes sense to have shelter belts for wind, because this must not always reduce the production due to the loss of area where the trees are standing. You can't grow corn, or you can't grow other fruits. So this is a loss, but the productivity of these agricultural products may become enhanced due to the shelter belts, because problems of drought are reduced by less evaporation in case of less wind, and also by in the night when there is less wind, also the moisture from the air will better get back to the soil if there is less wind by these shelter belts. And another important field of improvement is the management of grassland and pastures. Generally, grassland is storing a lot of carbon, even sometimes more than forests, I learned in the meantime. And the right way of grazing can improve this situation. As mentioned in this short film, the advantages of humus-rich soils are better nutrient supply, and especially better access to micronutrients, which often are not part of the fertilization. So zinc and other micronutrients are only be supplied by fungi and similar microorganisms in the soil if they are there. So this is a good argument. And also I learned last year that the supply of these microorganisms itself can improve the plant health by the way that, for example, the upper layer of the leaves, for example, become more resistant against fungi attacks if these micronutrients are available due to the better soil life. And therefore, then you need less chemicals to prevent fungi infections. So all is somehow linked, and as a basic idea, you should keep in mind that the better the natural soil life is developed, the better the plant health will be. And another important point I used to stress to our farmers is the possibility for rainwater to go down to the earth is improved if the soil health and the humus content is better. So what you see on the right picture, that water does not infiltrate the soil, is less, and it goes better in, and it will be stored more water for the dry periods. So this is also a very good advantage for the new situations under climate change, where we even facing droughts here now. So there are so many good arguments to improve the humus content of the soil and the soil life itself, especially to mitigate these new problems of climate change. So even if we could not really prevent climate change anymore, what I am thinking already, at least the problems caused by climate change can be reduced by all these measures. So there's another initiative I just want to mention, which is going to the same direction. It was a worldwide idea to increase carbon storage in soils all over the world by 4 per thousand per year. People from France had this idea and explaining that global soils already now are containing 2 to 3 times more carbon than the atmosphere. So if this storage could be enhanced accordingly, means 0.4% per year, then all the excess CO2 which now is being added to the atmosphere store could be removed from the atmosphere. And all these advantages we just mentioned, like resistance to soil erosion, water retention, and so on, will be achieved. So this is an initiative on which our project somehow is also based. Here's a description of this initiative again, showing the pool, these 1,500 billion tons of carbon stored in the soil, as compared to 4.3 billion tons going to the atmosphere every year. So this is less than 4 per thousand. If it would be possible to move this down to the earth, then we would not have an increase of CO2 anymore in the atmosphere. And how it works, we just saw by getting plants to take this carbon up. Here are the methods they have listed. Means never leave bare soil, as I just mentioned. It's also a question of productivity. I mean, a bare soil does not produce anything. So it's always better to use the soil all over the year, which is much easier in India, of course, except the dry periods. I mean, here in winter, we have plants are not growing, but due to warmer situations, even in winter, it's growing somehow here. And in India, you have not the problem of cold, but of drought, of course. Then you can introduce intermediate crops. That means between the 2 harvests. This is not a question for you, but because you can produce all over the year except dry periods. Intercropping means mix some different kinds of agricultural plants. Then here, this is agroforestry, add hedges to the field and field boundaries and so on. I will show you later. Optimize pasture management, as I just mentioned. It depends on how the cattle will graze there. This has a strong influence to the carbon storage of the soil. Restore land in poor condition. That's an important point for India. And improve water and fertilizers management, use organic fertilizers and so on. So as I mentioned, these 2 points are relevant for me now, means for agroforestry. So why agroforestry? Most of you should have had lectures on agroforestry already, so you should know something about it already. Basically, it's about optimizing the positive interactions between the components, means between the trees and the agricultural crops, to achieve a more productive and more sustainable and diversified production. About more productive, I will tell you soon. Sustainable means that the trees on agricultural land can reduce, of course, erosion problems, and therefore making agriculture more sustainable. And also it's a matter of diversification in case of ecology and economics, because in case you have a drought and all the agricultural crops die, then at least we'll have the trees which have a better access to groundwater. So this is especially when you think about climate change, a possibility to reduce the risk. So this is the source of this information. And here you see another basic graph which shows about productivity, as I mentioned. If you have trees like walnuts, or if you have a crop like wheat, you can have 100% of the land with one or the other. But if you mix it, you have more than 100% of production, because of course wheat is not using the product, the soil and everything during all the year, but the trees are even green when the wheat has been harvested. So the sunlight and the water is being used more intensively if you have such kind of a mixture between trees and agricultural crops. So this land equivalent ratio is an important aspect in terms of productivity and intensive use of land. So I found an interesting book from 1929, Tree Crops, A Permanent Agriculture, from J.R. Smith in the US, who wrote this sentence here on the right side. That means here this is focusing on areas where normally agriculture is not really possible, on slopes and steep places and so on, or dry places where only trees can produce something. Basically, this picture I took last year in Portugal, where they have traditional systems of cork oak. They are producing cork, and it may be possible even to produce pigs below the cork oaks. This is a very traditional system. Or in other Mediterranean areas, for example, what is this in English? Castanea sativa. This is a castagne. No, I don't know this in English. It's a fruit from a tree, which the trees are producing. Or olive is also another fruit from trees with a lot of oil in. So this systems with these fruit-bearing trees, together with pigs, for example, or goats or whatever, grazing under these trees, are systems in the Mediterranean area which have been used for centuries in a sustainable manner. And this Mr. Smith, when thinking about this, he was explaining that basically mankind is on a wrong track by producing its food mainly by herbaceous species like corn or millet or whatever kind of grasses, because by nature most of our agricultural land would be forested, of course. So trees are the more stable and more productive way of land use than agricultural plants. So it would be a better idea to base the human nutrition on trees, because they are more stable and ecologically sound. So as an example, he is calling this Castanea sativa tree as corn on trees. So I found this idea very interesting, and it's another good argument to promote more trees in landscape, because there are so many tree species which produce something edible. I mean, in your tropical area and subtropical areas, there are even more than we have in Germany. We do not have really that many trees locally which are producing food, but we could introduce more from America or from China, also from the same type of climate. And nuts, for example, are a very healthy food and growing on trees or bushes. And we should switch a little bit from grain to this kind of food, I think. And we can use more trees and have a more stable and even more healthy production of food. So this you should keep in mind. You can find this book online, which is mentioned down there, and can download it. It's a comprehensive book showing all the different types of fruit bearing trees in America, which includes some subtropical and tropical areas, of course, like Hawaii and the southern states of the US. So it's really interesting to see how many trees there are to feed mankind. So now coming to the CO2 mitigation effects, basically there are three of them. The first, of course, is conservation of existing carbon pools, means soil and plants are the carbon pools. Secondly, also conservation is the first thing, because many of these carbon pools are still decreasing. The right picture I took somewhere south of Pune in Maharashtra also, on the way to Bangalore on the train. You see in India you can find many landscapes which are nearly having any trees anymore, even though by nature it might have been a forest or a dry forest at least. So these are depleting carbon stores, and even erosion may take place and further decrease the carbon storage in soil. So you can increase the existing carbon pools and you can reduce greenhouse gas emissions from fossil sources in addition. Now I will explain these 3 points in more detail. So in India, I found this information recently that there are more than 107 million hectares of land unproductive, more or less. You can see on the pictures linked on the left side, both is more or less in the Himalaya region. So they have been rendered unproductive due to degradation processes. I could see something like this, and I took the pictures there in Himalaya region, but it's in other parts of the country as well. So this degradation has to be stopped to avoid further CO2 emissions from soil carbon and from trees which are being removed. And this can be done by the introduction of agroforestry systems, of course. So when it comes to carbon pools, as I mentioned, it's soil and it's trees, but it's also wood products. So wooden products are storing carbon after the trees have been felled. Basically, on the land, the biomass is a carbon store, the dead wood in natural forests, litter, soil organic common, and wood products. So this is the list from the IPCC, which is explaining this in more detail. So these carbon pools could be built up by planting trees and using timber for long-lasting products. So, and finally, the production of timber also can be used to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from fossil sources. Easy to understand if you substitute coal or oil or gas by using wood energy, as long as it is coming from a sustainable production, of course. I mean, if you destroy the forest by using fuel wood, then it's not a reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, but if you produce this material in a sustainable way, then it is. And here on this picture, you can see a picture. You can see a wood gasification plant in Odisha, which I once visited, where they make wood gas from small trees, which they regrow for this purpose, and which is being used for rural electrification. And by this, of course, being a subsidy for oil lamps or whatever you use for lighting of villages. And another important effect is if you use construction timber instead of steel, this is called material substitution, then you can avoid all these emissions linked to steel production, starting with getting the raw material out of the ground and the processing of steel and so on. This is a very intense, energy-intensive process. And all this can be avoided if you use timber constructions. And finally, a small point is the reduction of fertilizer, because the nitrogen fertilizer production, of course, is quite energy intensive. And if you can reduce this by using compost and having a better soil life, then you really can reduce the fertilizer application and the fertilizer losses, of course, which is a problem in Germany because it's going to the groundwater, as I mentioned earlier. So it's a very unproductive loss of expensive and energy intensive artificial fertilizer, which could be reduced if we would have more soil organic matter in the ground. And even pesticides can be reduced. I will show you a picture later by agroforestry systems. Yeah, so this is the other way of gaining some progress and create advantages for climate change mitigation. So I did a study on these things in 1990 till 1993. So it's already a long time ago, more than 25 years ago. I was already working on that topic. At this time, even German politicians became aware of the problem of climate change, and there was a big commission on the German parliament to deal with this, and we had a research project about the effect of German forests and German forestry on climate change and what could be improved. And as a byproduct, so to say, we also looked at tropical forests, and I stayed for 6 weeks in Costa Rica at this time in 1991. I was staying in Costa Rica, and there I collected data and evaluated literature on this different kind of agroforestry systems they were having in Costa Rica at this time. And then I made this estimation on the potential effects of agroforestry systems on the carbon household. So these effects I just explained to you means carbon storage in agroforestry systems. There's a big variation. It depends on how many trees per hectare you are having finally. There are very different kinds of agroforestry systems, of course. Accordingly, this carbon storage is very different. Wood products, as I mentioned, wood products are the prolongation of carbon storage in trees, in living trees. It, of course, also depends very much which kind of timber you are producing in the agroforestry systems. In short rotations, you never can produce sawn timber. I mean, timber, wood for wood logs, which can be sawn and therefore for being used for construction. Of course, sometimes you can use very small diameter trees for construction, then it's not necessary to have a long rotation period, but it all depends. Then also soil organic matter can change, can be different in different systems. And another effect of the creation of agroforestry systems can be the protection of existing forests in tropical countries, especially not here in Germany, but in countries where still primary forests are being cut to get new agricultural land because the existing agricultural land is being affected by erosion, like in Brazil or in other countries. Then if you can make the agricultural production more stable by creating agroforestry systems, then you can use the same land forever for agriculture and do not have any losses due to erosion, and therefore maybe not a need to go somewhere else except your population is increasing or something like this. But if it's just because of the destruction of agricultural land that you cut new forest land, then this can be prevented by the introduction of these more sustainable agroforestry systems. And therefore there's a frame of 0 to 1,000, means 1,000 tons of carbon per hectare is in a very rich tropical forest. And if this effect is not there at all, then of course it's 0. So these are the changes in storage. I have looked for some examples from India, which are in the same range, of course, of these numbers I found at this time. And the second type of effect is this energy and material substitution, which I just explained to you. So energy substitution is if you produce fuel wood in your agroforestry system and therefore don't need any fossil fuels anymore there, then this is an effect. I mean, if you can't substitute anything because they are relying on fuel wood anyway, then this cannot be taken into account. But if really you can avoid the use of fuel from other sources, then it can be counted. And also the material substitution. I mean, if you only have wood as a raw material anyway, then you cannot take this into account. I mean, for construction, you can use also building blocks, of which the production needs energy. If you make it from timber instead of this, then you avoid this energy. But this is an energy consumption, basically. Yeah. So, and reduction of fertilizer is a very small effect, but it can be taken into consideration. By the way, this publication, I can send you a copy by email if you are interested. I have it as a PDF here. So you can ask me for this publication, which is still somehow correct after this long time. And there are more studies in the meantime which find similar data. So this is now a kind of summary of all the effects I just have mentioned. I developed a similar curve at this time, but this was developed independently from my research by the IPCC. And it's maybe not so easy to understand, but I try to explain to you. So if you have a barren land or an purely agricultural used land and you plant trees there, it must not be a forest, it can be an agroforestry system as well. Of course, one effect will be that the soil organic carbon will increase over time. So this is carbon which is being taken out of the atmosphere and stored in the soil. That is this yellow area, which will not go forever, not increase forever, but for a long time it will. Then you have a litter, of course, which is falling down from the trees and laying beneath them. This will also accumulate a little bit over time. And then the next pool is trees. In this case, it's assumed that these trees are growing 40 years and then be clear-cutted. This must not be the normal way. I mean, you can do thinnings in between and get some wood earlier, not only after 40 years, but to simplify the thing, it's good to see like this. So this would be either a forest or agroforestry systems. You can also change, of course, the period of time. You can do it for 20 years and cut it then or something like this. This is just to understand the system of thinking and counting. So if you cut these trees, you have long-lived products, as I mentioned earlier, like buildings and furniture, and you have short-lived products. The lifespan, depending on the lifespan, it will be decomposed or burnt or whatever after more or shorter or longer time. So the short life products will disappear, or the carbon will go back to the atmosphere relatively soon. And long life products, it takes longer. And landfill, whatever comes to the landfill will stay there for some time or become decomposed to methane or whatever. So then you get some fuel wood, which will be a substitute for fossil fuels. So this is an effect. If you don't burn this amount of fossil fuel, the atmosphere will be released by this amount of CO2 at every harvest once, and this will add up. So this is one harvest of trees. This emission reduction will be existing forever, and after the second harvest, the same amount will be added up. And the same is true for this. So this was energy for products, and this was displaced fossil fuel, but it doesn't matter. It's the same effect. So you need less fossil fuels, and this fossil fuel savings will add up over long periods, means forever. This is a basic difference to what in trees, what in forests happen if you would not cut the trees. So they would, this green thing would increase more and more, but finally end with a maximum production, because no forest grows to the sky. There will be a on the long term, there will be a steady state situation where the carbon store is full and nothing else will be stored anymore in these forest ecosystems. Sometimes it was found that some ecosystems are exporting carbon in form of humus, which will go by the rivers down to the ocean. So then still even primary forests may be a sink, even though the biomass in these primary forests do not grow anymore. But yeah, if you just look at the atmosphere, at the biomass stored in forests, they will not become bigger than a maximum level of biomass for a primary forest. So this would not increase, but if the forest is being used for production of timber, then you have, with every harvest, you have a new reduction effect by displacing fossil fuels. So this curve will go straight up without flattening at all. That in practice means basically a managed forest is a permanent CO2 pump, which takes CO2 out of the atmosphere and leads to stores and to CO2 emission reductions from fossil fuels. That is what this graph should express. So now coming back to, or coming to agroforestry itself. So does someone has a question, by the way? We can discuss this here at maybe. Basically, it might be better to discuss some points during my presentation and not at the end only. I don't know what the organizers are saying to this. I don't hear anything, so I proceed. I'm not even sure whether anybody hears me, but okay. I found just a recently published book in India about agroforestry systems with commercial clonal plantations. I could not read it, but on the web you can see some chapters already. And I took some numbers out of this status of forest resources in India, for example. I will show you some numbers which I found there in this very new book. It was written by Pierre Lal, which I met when I was in India, and I have had already the pleasure to see these kind of plantations which are described in this book. Here you can see it was in 2007, some 3 or 4 year old clonal eucalyptus plantations. And this does not look like agroforestry, but I can tell you that at least during the first 2 years of these growing trees, of the tree growth, you can even plant some agricultural crops between the rows, but then it becomes too dark. So in this way, it's kind of agroforestry system like Taungya system, which you should know. So means agriculture for some period of time only, and then finally a forest stand. So this system impressed me very much when I saw it. And these kind of trees, as a German forester, trees in this size you would at least have, or at earliest may be having after 10 or 15 years and never in this quality. So they are growing really very fast in India, in Punjab in this case. So this is, let's say, from the wood production point of view, the most intensive form of agroforestry you can imagine. So I would suggest everybody should have a look into this new book, which just came out recently. When I was in Punjab and saw this plantation, I also visited some companies using the timber of these kind of plantations. Here it's veneer and plywood factory. And the numbers I mentioned from the book here are about the timber production in India. The consumption of wood in India is something like 48 million cubic meter per year, maybe even more, because these numbers are not completely up to date. And this is only the need for construction, furniture, and industries, not for fuel wood, of course. It's only the technically used timber, 48 million cubic meters per year. And out of this demand could theoretically supplied by the forests, but forests, due to the green felling ban, only deliver some 3.2 million cubic meters. And by far the biggest proportion of wood used in industries is coming from trees outside the forest nowadays, like the plantation we just saw. It's I don't know, these numbers are not completely correct and up to date, but they give an overview about the sizes of these numbers. And as a matter of fact, these tree production, timber production outside the forest in these agroforestry systems are the most important source of industrial wood in India these days. What the wood which doesn't come from Indian forests and not from trees outside forests, some specialties or some additional timber is being imported, even from Germany. We are selling some of our beech trees to India, and maybe even some pine and spruce trees for construction purposes. So this is also the volume of this imports is twice the production of Indian forests, if these numbers are really true. Of course, these numbers are showing that there's an urgent need of more wood production in India to reduce the imports and to support or to meet the needs of the growing population. You may know yourself where timber is being used and where not. This was my room in India, where I had a mixed table, partly of wood, partly of steel, and this is a furniture factory in India. Here you can see where you could use timber instead of steel, so getting this material substitution effect. This roof construction is made from steel, but it could have been made from timber as well, and that would have been less energy intensive. And this concrete construction could also have been made from wood. Same like this kind of furniture, and the legs of the table could have been made from timber. That would have resulted in a smaller CO2 emission from these industries. Yeah, when I was on India tour with the forestry students from FRI, we visited agroforestry research plot in Andhra Pradesh, and here they explained us that they tried mixtures of cotton with some wood species and even bamboo And we visited these places because the main reason here was to reduce the need for insect, the use of insecticides. You see, dynamics of insect population should be controlled by a better mixture. So it was not about water or humus or whatever. It was just to reduce the attacks of insects on cotton. And they had trials with cotton under or between eucalyptus and cotton between bamboo, which did not work. You can obviously see that bamboo is not a good species to mix it with any agricultural crop because they tend to hang over the fields in between. So this is not a good idea. At this point, I want just to mention that you not even need to produce cotton at all, because you can produce the same kind of fiber, or not the same kind of fiber, but basically the same valuable fiber for clothes from wood itself. You might have heard that there's a way of converting pulp to viscose fibers. There are some companies in the world doing this, and it can be made from our local beech wood here in Germany, but also from eucalyptus from Brazil or elsewhere. So this is a special conversion of pulp to fibers for special clothes or even for normal clothes and special kind of papers. So if you would produce all these cotton or these fibers for clothes, which are now cotton from timber, that would be even more close to nature than this mixture of cotton with some kind of trees. Just to mention this idea. So yeah, other agroforestry systems we saw was a mixture with medical plants here on the campus of FRI. And yeah, this we saw in South India. It's silver oak as shadow trees for tea plantations. It's a very well-known and widespread application of agroforestry. This timber, this silver oak is a good construction timber as well. I found it in other tropical countries as well. It's coming originally from Australia, but I found it in Africa and elsewhere, this silver oak. So, and these well-known house gardens, which are a very intensive form of agroforestry around the local, the villagers' homes, which is a very good mixture of everything. Home gardens. So in 2014, I went to Tamil Nadu to see basically the production of cocoa nuts and cocoa, the processing of cocoa fibers. And there I saw that there are many mixtures with coconut, for example, grazing under coconuts, not only under these young ones, but also under the big coconuts. Grazing took place. This was another tree under coconuts, and even banana is possible under coconuts, or coconuts are of course part of these home gardens as well. So in Costa Rica, once I saw other systems, like here also shadow trees for cacao. These living fences can be applied everywhere, even in Germany, of course. Not have artificial posts, but use the trees as fences, and the branches and the leaves can be nicely used as food for the animals on the pasture land. And here you can see very big trees, maybe also eucalyptus on steep slopes with pasture, also in Costa Rica. And this very intensive agroforestry system I found in Rwanda. Here you can see basically 3 layers: the agricultural land with very small stripes only, then this kind of hedges which can be used for mulching or for food, feeding animals, I mean, or fuel wood. And these are basically leguminous trees which are fixing not only carbon but also nitrogen in the soil. And then you have these good big trees for construction timber. So this was a very good system. Here was also a table about what is agroforestry and the different species which are grown together there. And the advantages or the products means, as I mentioned, tree and hedges pruned for compost also, I did not mention, for mulch, fodder production, branches as fuel wood, shadow for arable land, multi-story cultivation, makes efficient use of scarce land, which is very important in Rwanda because it's a highly populated country. And then in a mountain area like Rwanda also is, it's very important to provide runoff reduction and soil stabilization, because otherwise you will have a lot of erosion in this area. So this was kind of a demonstration plant which was funded or supported and environmentally and scientifically supported by Germany. So yeah, these are now some agricultural systems in Germany. This kind of mixture of hens or poultry and either poplar or fruit trees is just becoming more and more popular, you can say. I found meanwhile a number of farmers applying the system. The background is that chicken do not like to live on open spaces because they always are endangered by birds to catch them. So they love to have some kind of shelter if they are outside. I mean, in most of the stables in Germany, they are inside a building, so this is not a problem, but this is not animal-friendly way of keeping them if they are always in a stable, and they are in thousands in one stable. So this should be avoided, and many people are not willing to support this intensive production of hen and of chicken and of eggs, and therefore are willing to pay a little bit more if they know that hens are kept outside. And if they are kept outside, then such kind of shelter is very good for the hens and for the hens' health as well. They are not so under stress because they are not afraid of being attacked from the air. And also climate is better. They have shadow, they have some other green material to take up, and some insects also. So it's a very good idea, and at the same time you can produce some timber on that place because it's kind of a short rotation coppice which you can do here. And the second application is for pest control. If you grow apple or other fruit trees, then hens or even ducks can help to reduce the pressure of insect pests on these fruit trees. This also has been evaluated already here in Lower Saxony in our state, and may be applied more because of these environmentally friendly effects. This picture is not basically agroforestry, but I just took it because it shows a nice effect, especially if we have this very hot summers again, because all the animals do not like standing in the sun all the time. They prefer to have some shadow at hot periods, and this shadow is also good for their production. I mean, milk and meat production has been shown is increasing if the animals are not suffering from heat so much. So just have shadow on the meadow on the pasture land is good for the animals and for their production. So last week, I visited a farmer, this man here, who has some newly created experimental plot. He was tired of producing asparagus and strawberries and filling out so many forms for getting the money and for getting his subsidies and so on. So, and therefore he gave his land to someone else to do this job, and he is trying new things, these kind of systems which are totally new for us here. I mean, it's only a few years old, so the trees, these are some fruit trees which are not so big at the moment. This is kiwi here, which is needs some support to grow, and in between is potato, and he is testing many mixtures and many tree species and many arable fruits, even in terms of pest control without chemicals. But this man, he just was bored of normal agriculture and is trying something new, and was very happy about his possibilities to test this. This is something we want to promote and to support in the future in our project, carbon farming. So now coming maybe to the most important point for some of you, or for anybody, basically, the basic problem of planting and growing trees is that the return of investment may be there, but it takes a long time. Farmers are used to get the income after 1 year, or I mean after some months, when they grow agricultural crops, and they always have problems in investing in trees which may be productive after a couple of years only. They may not even be able to invest such amount of money, even if this will on the long term have a positive economic effect on them, which has been shown in many cases that such kind of agroforestry system can be more effective, financially effective, and economically benefiting than the pure agricultural production. In Costa Rica, I found some study where they showed that you can have corn, pure corn field, or you can have pure eucalyptus short rotation copies. And I mean, in the case of corn, you have your income every year, and short rotation copies after 4 years only. For every 4 years, you have an income from wood then. But on the long run, the most economical thing was the mixture of both in this system of Taungia. So you can have 2 years of corn between the eucalyptus, and then 1 year where you have nothing, neither timber nor corn, and the 4th year you have a lot of timber. So this mixed system was financially more efficient than the pure production, but you have this 1 year with no income. And the first 2 years you have less income of corn because some of the land is grown, stocked with timber. So that's a problem. If the farmer needs annual income from all of his land, then he has a problem how to fund this periods where the income is smaller. And here's a list what possibilities could be used for supporting farmers. So either he has enough own money, which rarely will be the case, or he can take a bank loan if he gets one. That's a question. Or there is a system of micro credits, which may be helpful. I myself have given some of my money to such an organization which is giving microcredits to, or giving credits to microcrediting agencies all over the world. This also in India, there are some institutions which are being supported by this. So this could be one source for the implementation of agroforestry systems. Then of course government can give money for this, should give money. I don't know how it's working in India. Then there are even local NGOs or foundations in every country maybe who give money for this. Foreign state and foundations, this was the example of Rwanda, where it was funded by a German NGO and maybe even by one of the German states, this trial there. There are international agencies like FAO or World Bank or whatever. And finally, today's main topic is carbon credits. This is a point I will go a little bit more into details. I don't know whether you have heard of this. I think you should, because such kind of projects are going on since many years, not only with tree planting, but also with other projects which reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Since more than 20 years, this kind of projects are existing, and they are based on the idea that people or companies who are emitting greenhouse gases, they firstly, of course, should try to reduce these emissions as much as possible by saving energy or by using solar energy and whatever is possible in their case. But always there will be a rest of emissions which cannot be avoided. And this should be mitigated by other or by projects which reduce CO2 emissions or which store carbon, like forests are doing. There are certification companies who look for projects which could be used for this kind of CO2 mitigation. I myself worked for some time in a company like this. Prima Klima Worldwide was its name, or it's still its name, it's still working. It had been founded in 1993. That means just after I had done this research on CO2 mitigation by forestry. It was founded, and we offered private people and companies to compensate their CO2 emissions for 1,000 euro per, no, 1,000 euro, not per ton, 100 euros per ton, I think. It was 50 D-Mark, so it was 100 D-Mark, so 50 euro per ton CO2. We collected this money by these people who wanted their emissions become mitigated, and we sent this money to foreign, mainly foreign, not only foreign, but mainly foreign afforestation projects. Even in India, we had one. I was near Dehradun, there was one of these projects. I went there when I was there, but I didn't find any tree. So I don't know what happened there, but that was not okay in this case. But in Argentina, in I think in Kenya and many other countries, still projects are running where afforestations are being funded by this money from these German people and companies. There's a so-called voluntary market. So that means you can collect this money from people without a strong kind of control whether this CO2 really is mitigated exactly in this amount. So this is a voluntary market. People are happy if they know and are somehow sure that the money really is being used for these plantations, but there's also this official market where there's a need for CO2 reduction in European Union. It will become valid quite soon that every company has to reduce its emissions. And as far as it's not possible to reduce it, they have to give money for carbon credits to give it for this kind of afforestation projects. This will become more and more important in the next years. And the money, the price for the carbon credits, the carbon credit certificates will increase. And therefore, there is a growing need for projects where this money can go. And there are organizations like these gold standards, which are looking at these projects and organizing it, where you can try to develop a project in your country and get these standards from this organization and sell your carbon credits to the investors who need them. This is an existing market which will become more and more important in the future. So just to tell you what is necessary to develop such kind of a project, it's about any kind of greenhouse gas. So all the 6 greenhouse gases, which includes methane, for example, in the Kyoto Protocol, should be tackled. So, for example, it's not always afforestation or something like this. It can also be the use or the collection and use of methane from garbage from landfills. As you may know, landfills are the source of methane because of the digestion of the waste. This methane is being produced, and it's a strong greenhouse gas. Therefore, it's a good idea to collect this methane and to use it as an energy source. So this could also be kind of a project like this, or even methane from coal mines could be collected or whatever. There are so many ideas. Or what also happens is more effective stoves as a traditional project to reduce the fuel wood consumption, which is not effective at all. It's a traditional way of using fuel wood. So all these are kind of projects which can be developed under these schemes. What is important is this project always must be additional. That means you will not get money which are for projects which could be done without this money. I mean, which would be done anyway. So for this, you would not get the money. So it must be really an additional project, which would not happen without this funding. And of course, the project must not have any negative impact on sustainable development in these areas. So that means you have to involve the local stakeholders in that area if you want to afforest something or to create an agroforestry system. This surely will only be possible in a sustainable way if the local population wants this too, and if they are fully employed in this and fully integrated in the planning of this project. So this in every case has to be done, and it will be controlled whether it will happen. So this was the official global carbon market system, which can be used for supporting agricultural projects or agroforestry projects, I mean. But you can also collect kind of donations from organizations which collect simply money for tree plantings, like this one. The global initiatives of young people. They are funding this project in Mexico, which looks like agroforestry, of course. They are based in Berlin, and they are collecting money with a system of reviews. So if you buy a product online and you are asked to give a review on this product, and for every review this company gets from their customers, they will pay €1 for this tree planting programs. And they do not manage these plantations themselves. They just give it to this organization, to their official partner. And this official partner of this program is the Plant for the Planet Foundation, which had been founded some 20 years ago or so. Basically, by this young man who was about 10 years old when he had the idea that the world needs more trees. So a very young boy was inspired by Wangari Maathai, which is a lady in Kenya, which had planted many thousand trees in her country. And she wrote a book on this. And that was the inspiration for this boy, Fink Beiner, who then decided that he wanted to collect money for tree plantings all over the world. And he founded, together with his father, this organization. And later, this young man from Nepal came to them. So he is also in the board nowadays. And he also started in the age of 10 with some activities because he was troubled by the melting of the Himalayas and by the illiteracy in Nepal. So he wanted to do something against this and helping young students to read and so on. So these two young men who now are more than about 25, they started 15 years ago in the age of 10 with such big movements, which are now still existing and which, as I mentioned, are now collecting money for tree plantings all over the world. And of course, you can try to get some of this money for agriculture, for agroforestry plantations in India. You need to have a convincing project, and then you can try to source their money. In our carbon farming project, we are looking for business models, as I mentioned at the beginning, and these models are here the types of models which are not all applicable for agroforestry in India, of course, but which could be used in Germany. For example, here starting with models within the agri-food chain, that means if you create a label which says this milk has been produced by an humus-friendly production system which stores additional carbon, then you have to pay a little higher price for this. And then this money can help to improve the situation even more, so carbon reduction. In Germany, of course, we are having a big number of people who are aware of these ecological problems and who are willing and who are having the money to pay a little bit more for products which come from such kind of environmentally more friendly agriculture. So, but this goes over the agri-food chain. That means the milk production company is involved and the retail stores are involved. You can also try it directly. So the farmer himself is selling his products in his farm shop, and then he can collect the money himself for his extra spendings for more carbon friendly or climate friendly production systems. Then, if the government supports this kind of systems, which is happening somehow in Germany, as I mentioned, these intermediate crops and so on are already being funded by European Union money, then it's like this, including government institutions. Or finally, if emission compensation takes place, so industry has to compensate its emissions, it can directly, the money can given directly to the farmer from the industries or via such kind of a system I just explained to you earlier. So this was all about the funding systems. And at the very end now, I just want to draw your attention to this system of biochar, which is in the very beginning in Germany, of course. If you convert biomass, mainly wood, to biochar, which is not charcoal. It's not precisely the same as charcoal because the production process is a little bit more sophisticated. Then you can use this biochar for many purposes, like filtration material, like additional food for people. I mean, coal and char is also good for health, for people, for humans as well as for animals. And you can also add slurry or bacteria compost to this biochar and use it for soil improvement. And the historical way of doing it has been found in Latin America. I don't know whether you have heard about terra preta. This is a layer in the Amazon rainforest which has been found rich of carbon, and this coal, a type of carbon of course, showing that even some hundreds or 1,000 years ago, people used this tropical rainforest area for intensive agriculture by using this biochar added with slurry and urine and whatever kind of organic material to improve the soil. And by this, it was even possible to produce agricultural goods in a tropical rainforest area where normally soil is very poor. So this kind of process is the idea, or created the idea, and there are now systems to produce this biochar in such kind of devices. It's quite expensive, of course, and therefore it's a problem to promote it, but it can be used as an official CO2 mitigation effect, and therefore it's a possibility to get these carbon credits also for this system. And we are hoping that it can be promoted more, because it will be another way to take carbon out of the atmosphere and to put it down to the earth. So give me just a minute. I just need to go to the toilet. I will be back soon.
If any of the participants want to ask any question, so it is requested to post first on the chat box, and if some more clarification is required, then they are allowed to speak directly to the speaker.
So now I'm back, sorry. Okay, so this was this topic, and now I'm coming to the summary. As I explained at the beginning, there is an urgent need for more humus in agricultural soil everywhere in the world, you can say nearly, and this need is becoming more and bigger due to the increasing risk of droughts and of floods, because humus is the way to better manage the soil water and to store more water and so on if you have more humus in the soil. Agroforestry systems are an additional and very important way of mitigating CO2 and of making agroforestry more resilient against the climate change effects. As I mentioned, therefore you need trees, and trees are always expensive and a long-term investment, and therefore it's very important to find funding sources for the creation of agroforestry systems. But these sources are available basically. There's a lot of money which is seeking places to go, and it's our duty and our possibility to create good projects where the money can go. And this is kind of a business entrepreneurship opportunity for some of you people to learn more how to create such systems and to find the way to get the money there. So I'm thanking you for listening to me so long. I think we are somehow in time. And for more information, you can see these links to the carbon farming website and on my own website. It's in German, of course, but on this site you find links to some English websites, like this book I mentioned earlier from this American guy, and some other carbon farming or some other agroforestry literature in English. But you can also send me an email and ask me further questions, and now we may have our discussion, I think. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for your very elaborated and case study based discussion on agroforestry and mitigation, climate mitigation. Sir, some questions have been posted in the chat box, so I'm dictating these questions. So please reply, sir, accordingly. And later on, if any of the participants want to share or discuss something, he or she will directly talk to you, sir. So let me ask you some questions which has been posted. Vipnash Ranjan Sahu.
Sorry, I did something wrong. Okay.
Hello, sir.
Yeah, I didn't hear anything from your side.
Okay, sir. I'll repeat again, sir. Let me see the chat box. But okay, it's disconnected, so I have to. So most of the questions have been answered. The question being asked by Bimnash Ranjan, that if we grow the forest plants with the agronomic crop simultaneously, then any heavy consumption of nutrients than agronomic crops, sir?
I did not understand completely. What was the question?
Is Bipnash is here? Bipnash Ranjan Sahu? Bipnash Ranjan Sahu is here? Hello?
Just repeat it.
Sir, I'm repeating the question.
Yeah.
If we grow the forest plants with the agronomic crop simultaneously, then any heavy consumption of nutrients is a chance there? Heavy consumption of the nutrients?
Yeah, for sure. The forest trees also need nutrients, but the point is that they have a deeper root system, so they can take nutrients out of deeper layers of the soil, and they are being moved via the leaves to the upper layer in form of mulch. So basically, the trees are functioning as a kind of nutrient pump by taking nutrients out of lower soil layers where the crops cannot go. And even if you give artificial nutrients, artificial fertilizer to the crops, always part of these nutrients are washed out, and they can be taken up from this washout by the root trees, which are deeper. So that means trees are making the nutrient use more efficient.
Okay, sir. So one other question by Nidesh. He's asking that, can I know more about the funding agencies and opportunities for carbon farming or credits?
Yeah, you have to do research on. I do not know all of them, but what is going on in India, I don't know at all. So that's a matter of own research to find the appropriate funding agencies. I cannot tell you what is going on in India. I have no idea what the Indian government is offering there. That you have to find out yourself.
Bipnash Ranjan, if you're here, you can ask directly. One more question, it was there, but somehow we lost chat, all the queries. So you can ask directly to sir, Bipnash Ranjan. Are you listening, Bipnash? Ranjan Sahu. Okay. Any other participant, if you want to ask question? Bipash Ranjan, you can ask question. Okay, any other participant want to ask any question? Okay, so one more question is that adapting the agroforestry can bring the new pest problems to the agronomic crops. Adopting the agroforestry can bring the new pest problems to the agronomic crops.
Well, maybe in some cases it might, if you change the local climate, so to say, by trees. In some cases, it may cause problems for the agronomic pieces, plants, but that's a matter of experiments. I mean, in India, this agroforestry systems are, I think, widespread or even traditional in some areas, and so you have to look for the local experience. Even in Germany, you have to, it's always depending on the site. Everything is depending on the site. And you have to do experiments, what is going and what is not going. So I cannot give any general answers except this kind of answer, that it has,
Okay, sir. Okay.
has to be tested.
Okay, sir. Sir, another question from Krishna Kumari. Can you tell the importance or agroforestry in Indian Himalayan regions? Can you tell the importance of agroforestry in Indian Himalayan region?
The importance, of course, is very big in Himalaya regions because mountains are always prone to erosion, and there it's extremely important to have trees there. When I was there, basically kind of an agroforestry system, I could see that they are cutting the branches of the oak trees as a food for the goats, but it cannot be regarded it cannot really be regarded as an official agroforestry system. It's kind of agroforestry if you have goats under trees, but it was not managed really. I did not see any of these systems being systematically tried there when I was there, but I was not so much in the mountains, of course.
Sir, please unmute yourself. Okay, we have given privilege to the participants that they can unmute themselves and they can ask the questions. Sir, one more question is coming from Sathigala Rakesh.
Yeah, I can see
what
now.
are the trees which do not show? Question, can you see, sir? What are the trees which do not show any allopathic effect on agronomic crops? And can you please explain the method to say the importance of agroforestry in rural areas? And what are the different methods used in your country to check the humus content in a traditional way?
So allopathic effects may be there. There are some tree species, I would say. In a few cases, there are, of course, allopathic effects. This you have to check. I don't know. In Germany, we just discussed about one species, that's walnut, that might have allopathic effects. But I think the minority of the trees does have this. The importance of methods to check the humus content. I did not do this practically myself. I just know it's very difficult to measure humus content on agricultural land, and especially to observe changes, because an agricultural piece of land is always very diverse, and if you measure here and if you measure 1 meter further, it may be already different. And especially if you want to measure the development after 5 years or so, due to these variations, it's difficult to really detect a difference in development. That's of course one of the problems we are facing in our project, that it's not so easy to really show that the carbon content has been enhanced within a period of 5 years. But this is soil science, which is not my specialization. And you have to ask your soil science experts.
Again, Vipash Ranjan Sahu asked the same question, that eucalyptus tree fixes the nitrogen, but what about the other non-nitrogen fixing trees, sir, which helps the pulses to grow, or in agroforestry terms, sir? What about the others? Because as far as in your presentation, it's mostly about eucalyptus you have shown.
I don't know that eucalyptus fixes nitrogen. I don't believe this. I know Gmelia arborea is fixing nitrogen and some other, but eucalyptus does not fix nitrogen as far as I know. You have to look for leguminous trees like Gmelia arborea and so on. Yeah.
Yeah, Melina arborea, sir.
Yeah, so it's this way.
Melina arborea. Yeah.
And there must be some more other trees, but eucalyptus not. So eucalyptus maybe. I showed pictures of eucalyptus because there were examples, but it's not must not be the best type of tree for this. It's a fast-growing tree producing a lot of timber, but it's not producing, not fixing nitrogen. And poplar as well.
Any other questions, participants? If you want to ask or you want to write, your questions are going to be asked with the sir. Sir, there is another question from Rahul Seni. Trees takes more water in own life cycle, and how to manage the moisture in the agroforestry system, sir? Because there will be a question is like that, there will be a competition for the water, sir, because if you go for agroforestry, so the crop and the trees together, so that's I think is the question they are asking, sir.
Yeah, this of course is an important question, and again I cannot say it depends on site. As I mentioned, here we are planting trees to protect the plants, the agricultural plants from the wind, and therefore reducing the water consumption of the agricultural plants. But of course, the tree needs also water, but the tree has the ability to go with deeper roots to other sources of water. And there even is the system of water pumping. I recently learned that tree roots, as they go deeper, they can go to lower water levels, and at night when they do not evaporate so much water, then the roots may give up some water to the neighboring ground of the trees. So trees act as kind of a water pump. This is one aspect, and the other aspect is they are reducing the dry winds, and thereby, and even by shadow, of course, by their shadow, they are also reducing the water consumption of the agricultural crops. And how important and how effective everything is, that has to be tested on the site.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir, Raja sir is also want one clarification. So I hand over this. There will ask one question to you, sir.
Hello, Dr. Korsen. Thank you for a very good presentation. I want to know that still is there any the acid rain in Germany? The Black Forest you have studied it. I want to know about it.
I did not understand. Acid rain. So yeah. Okay. Now acid rain was a problem some 30 years ago, but due to the installation of filters in the coal-fired power plants, the SO2 was taken out of the exhaust gases, and so the main source of acid rain has been stopped. But still, of course, there's some nitrous gases from cars which are causing some acid rain, but it's much less than it was earlier. And in the forest lands and even on agricultural land, they are spreading calcareous material to compensate for this acid. So nowadays it's not really a problem anymore.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, sir. One very interesting question I saw that does the, so one question from Shali Pesar Lanka, does the concept of agroforestry will really work in the recent time? It's like altering the ecosystem and that increase the biodiversity in that ecosystem, which may increase the cost of production, particularly plant protection. So.
Yeah. As I mentioned, in this case of eucalyptus and cotton, they tested the agroforestry system as a mean to reduce the cost of plant protection. So generally, agroforestry system should have a higher biodiversity because there are simply more species, and this should reduce the cost of plant protection and not increase them. Therefore, I do not understand the question really, because why shouldn't it work in recent times? I mean, of course, the ecosystem is changed, but it's changed to a better and more stable system and not to a worse system.
Okay, sir. One more question from my student, forestry student, sir, Taraya. She's asking, sir, do you suggest eucalyptus for agroforestry because they have allelopathic effect? The same question, I think, and are quite fast-growing species and usually drains down the water table.
Yeah, I know that they are consuming a lot of water, and generally, I would not suggest anything because it's always depending on the situation. I mean, if you need the timber and if it obviously works, then you can do it. But if water supply will be reduced somewhere else due to these plantations, then you should keep this to consider this problem, of course. So then you might take other species or whatever, but you always have to keep in mind the entire environment, and if this will create a problem in water supply somewhere in the neighborhood, then you should do it, of course.
Sir, I would like to add a little bit more about this information. As you already visited Pyarelal Sir trial, I have also get to know more about his work. I also visited his sites in Punjab region, sir. But it's a myth about more about the eucalyptus draining down the water table. I would say there are other species as well, like Acacia and Alotica. There are more species which are more into draining down the water table comparative to eucalyptus. And the clones which he is working, they are more suitable for agroforestry system. Like his clone is 316 clone, 316, 413. These are the clones which they're performing very well in agroforestry. Sir. There are certain selections he made, which is very good and preferable for such kind of forestry systems. In the Indian context, I'm talking about, sir.
So I'm absolutely not a specialist in this. I just have seen these plantations, and I would suggest you should look into his book and collect additional information locally, because I am not a specialist on Indian trees.
Sir, I would like to take one more question, sir. Asked by Chetan BL, he is also a student. So farmer nowadays not applying in their land considering negative effect. Sir, being a forester, how could we approach to farmer considering a mitigation as a goal?
I think in this new book of PIR, there are some information. There's a chapter on how to inform the farmers. So I have no experience with how to speak to farmers in India. I'm just learning how to do it in Germany. So I cannot give any advice for your conditions. So you should ask your local experts.
Okay, sir. So the Michi Dani, she is asking, what are the most best forestry trees and agri-crops combinations for sustainable farming?
That's a very general question, and I cannot give any answer. It all depends on site. I can just repeat it all the time. That's what our silviculture professor said. Whatever question we asked when I was a student, he always started his answer with, it all depends on the site. This is something you have to learn as a forester. It all depends on the site. You can give no general information on questions like this.
Comment. Yeah. Yes. Because it's all depend on the interaction of environment and the species. So what climatic conditions and the soil conditions and how the species will interact, that depends. Yeah, totally agree with your view, sir.
And in addition, I mean, from the economic point of view, the farmer needs to know what kind of product he finally can sell under his conditions. This is also of big importance. For example, we suggest our farmers to plant more leguminous fruits like pea or beans. But if there is not a market for these products, it does not make sense for them to plant them. This is also an aspect which has to be kept in mind, not only the ecological environment, but also the economical environment. So at every place you have to check these conditions before suggesting anything.
Okay. So I would like to take last question. If anybody from the participant side want to ask any question. So if any of the participant want to ask any question, they can ask. Please unmute yourself and then ask the question. Any of the participant would like to directly interact to our speaker, they can ask directly the question. First, unmute yourself and then ask the question.
Good evening, sir.
Hello.
Good evening, ma'am. I am Vaishali.
You can unmute the video also.
Hello.
Yeah, I hear you.
Vaishali, you can unmute your video, okay? And you ask the question. Hello.
Yeah, I hear you. Waiting for your question.
Vaishali, ask the question.
Hello.
Hello. My question is about the biodiversity of insects. Like if we adopt this agroforestry, like the new species of insects may attack these agronomic crops as well. So if we are controlling the insects like with wide number of insects, like the cost of protection, plant protection will also increase. So how come it will be beneficial for the farmers if we adapt this agroforestry in case of this pest management?
We see it just the other way around. More diversity will theoretically lead to less problems. I mean, for example, here we promote trees as a nesting place for birds, and birds will eat the insect, which may harmful for the agricultural production. And let's say insects which are linked to trees are not always species who will eat the agricultural products. So it's not as simple as this. I think we have the opposite idea that the broader the species composition, the smaller the effects on fruits. The contrary is, I mean, if you have only one type of fruit, all the insects which like this fruit will be there and will be active. And if there are more species which may be harmful to the attacking insects, it's good for the agriculture and not bad.
And like introduction of new species also can happen if we are giving sufficient amount of trees or something like that. So there is also a possibility of introduction of new species, pest species. So how could you justify this, sir?
International species, you mean
introduction of new species?
Yeah, I mean it's always not good to introduce other species from abroad. I mean, but this is not linked to agroforestry, not at all. I mean, the species are not the species are not introduced by agroforestry systems, but by trade and import of, for example, wood destroying species are transferred by wooden products where they are in when these products are imported. But if you now start planting some local tree species in your fields, why there should be more species coming from abroad? I do not understand this. It's
like
only
by chance. It's not like we are introducing ourselves like intentionally, but it might be susceptible, like the trees or something like that. They have more chance of susceptibility.
Vaishali, let me interrupt, sir. Actually, this discussion on the role of insects into the ecosystem and biodiversity, we have a session on 22nd of this webinar regarding the bioindicators for monitoring biodiversity and ecosystem health. So it's better you put all your doubts there, because I think you will get more clarification regarding this topic. Okay.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
So only the last question I would like to take from the audience side. If any of the question which you feel very relevant to the topic or relevant to the presentation, they can ask. This is the last question because we are running short of time as well. Any question from the participant side?
I see the question, can we get jobs in Germany as a forester?
Yeah, this is from the Taraya again, she asking.
I mean, let's say as a forester, I would not say, because we have too many own foresters anyway already. As a scientist, it might be possible. I mean, if you go into more details and work in science, this may be possible. But as a forester itself, I mean, you have no idea about our forests. And as I mentioned, language is also quite important. So I wouldn't say that any foreigner easily can get a job as a forester. But as I said, as a scientist, so after, if you do your PhD here or if you come as a PhD, then there might be chances.
Okay, so this is end of question session. And sir, on behalf of organizing committee of this 4-day webinar, I would like to extend my gratitude and thanks to you for sparing your valuable time and sharing all your experience with us. And I'm also personally very much thankful to you that on a simple request, you agreed for giving your valuable time to my students. And thank you so much, sir, for sharing your knowledge and sharing your experience with us. And in coming future also, sir, we'll need your this kind of support and time with us. So formally, I would like to say that this is the end of today's session. And I would like to say thanks on behalf of entire team of College of Horticulture and Forestry to all the participants as well, showing their huge interest for attending this session and holding yourself very patiently and asking the questions very nicely to our speaker. Thank you so much, sir. And formally, I would like to say that today's session is over. So on behalf of organizing committee, I would like to extend my sincere thanks, first of all, to our Honorable Vice Chancellor, sir, for giving this support and guidance to us regarding these programs. And I also express my profound gratitude to Director Instruction, CAU Imphal, and Chief Guest of this inaugural session for their valuable support and time for funding and organizing this 4-day webinar. And I would like to acknowledge our gratitude to Professor B.N. Hazarika, Dean CHF, and Guest of Honor and Nodal Officer IDP Nahib for today's inaugural function. I also thanks Dr. P. Raja, Associate Professor and Coordinator, IDP Nahib, for their support and arranging all these setups for organizing today's seminar session. I also thanks Dr. Nasira, coordinator of the event, for her support, and I appreciate all the participants, including the students or all the students of other universities, entire country. They have been so supportive and they have been very patiently, they have listened all the entire presentation and asking such a very directive questions. And I hope that in coming days as well, you will show your same intensity of learning, and hope to see you tomorrow at the same time, 3 p.m. Tomorrow's session will start at 3 p.m. and our tomorrow's speaker will be Dr. Ashok Kumar, and he's from India, from Forest Research Institute. So thanks again to each and every person for their valuable time and support. Thank you so much. Once again, speaker sir, thank you so much for being with us for more than 2.5 hours, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Okay. I thank you very much. I was happy to have this opportunity to share some ideas with you, and hopefully it will create some good fruits, so to say. So if somebody will be inspired by some of the ideas, I hope that he or she will be successful. So goodbye.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
So wish you all the best.
Thank you, sir. Stay safe, everyone. Stay healthy. Thank you.